Okay, now we're good. Okay. So good morning, everybody. Today is it what is it? Chavches today? No, it's Chavav today, I think, right? It's Chavav Shvat. If I'm not mistaken, let me just make sure that it's Chavav. I'm pretty sure it's Chavav. Yeah, it's Chavav. Chavav Shvat is the Yorshad of the Taz, and we know that the Taz and the Shach wrote their Sforim. They're sort of working together. They challenge each other, and the Taz was zoiche that his sefer on Shulchan Aruch should be finished first, and the Shach wanted to know what schus did the Taz have that through that the Taz was zoiche to finish his sefer first. So the Shach sent two of his Talmidim on a clandestine mission to figure out how. So he sent them to go spend the Shabbos by the Taz's house, and somehow they'll ask him how he was Zoicha to finish first. So they arrive right before Shabbos, they go to the main shul where the Taz was the Rov, and after davening, they asked the Gabbai, can we eat by the Rov's house? So the Gabbai says, well, the Rav usually has a lot of guests, but he's fully booked. I'll hook you up with somebody else. So the Gabbai said, so they said, no, we only want to eat by the Taz. Now, before they were sent off by the Shach said, listen, if you're going to want to shmooze and learning with the Taz to have a conversation starter, let me tell you a very good kasha that you can ask him, and that'll be a good segue into starting a conversation with him. So they come there, and they're there by a meal. They're sitting all the way in the back, with the non-Talmidei Chacham, because they were just, regular guests. No one knew yet who they were. And in the middle of the meal, the Taz said the Torah, and then he went around the table, giving anybody an opportunity to ask any question that they want. Whatever you want to ask, you can ask. So when they got up to these two Talmidim of the Shach, one of them asked the kasha that the Shach sent. And the Taz thought about it for a second and said, that's a very good question. I don't have the answer. Please give me some time to think about it, and maybe tomorrow I'll be able to answer your kasha. So after the meal, they said they're very tired. Is it okay if we sleep here? So the Taz said, sure, Gesundheit, sleep here. So they just slept there on the bench that they were sitting on for the meal. Taz came and brought them pillows and covers, and they made believe like they were sleeping, but they were really up. And the Taz was up a whole night. He went into a room, was crying to Hashem, Rebbeinu Shalom, what a ver did I do that because of that, you covered up this important information for me. And I didn't have the answer to this kasha. And a voice came out, Nashamayim, and told him, look into this and this sefer, there you'll find the answer. So the next day by the Suda, the Taz says, I have a teretz to your kasha. And he tells him, Azoy Nazoy. So the Talmud of the Shach said, big deal. Anybody could know the answer if a voice comes out from Shemayim and tells it to them. So the Taz was taken aback because obviously they heard it too, which means these aren't just simple people. They must be some very chashuv people. So he asked them, who are you? So they said, we are Talmidim of the Shach. And the Shach sent us to find out in what schus you were zoicha to finish your sefer first. So he said, it's a long story. Much of Shabbos, I'll tell you. So much of Shabbos, they came back to the Taz, I guess by Melech Malka, and he told them as follows. When I got married, my wife and I made up that no matter what, no matter when, we're always going to have guests by our Shabbos table. And we always had guests, and that's why we still today, we have big guests by our Shabbos table. And when it was time to write my sefer, there was a din in Shemaim, and we'll get to that later. One day, there was a stormy night, and even I couldn't go to shul. It was so stormy and windy, I couldn't even go to shul. But I still needed a guest. Normally, I get my guests in shul. So I waited till things calmed down, and I was able to leave my house. And I went to my shul to see if maybe there's someone there who needs a meal. Nobody was there. I ended up going to every single shul in the city until I walked to the furthest shul from my house in the city. And there, lying on a bench, was this vagabond, dirty, long hair, dirty, long nails, torn clothing, smelly, and he's half asleep. And he says, "Get out of here!" And he starts cursing me in a very not respectful way. And I said, "I want you to come to me for the meal." He says, "Are you crazy? I'm starved, but I'm so tired, I can't move. Don't bother me." And I begged him until finally he came. And the whole way along, walking back to my house, he's cursing me out. "You jerk! You woke me up in the middle of the night." He's attacking me, but I was just nice to him. I took him to my house, and he says, "You have no idea how hungry I am. I'm going to eat you out of house and home." He said, just come to my house. I don't care." And in Kachava, he ate him out of house and home. He wanted every fancy food. He was eating it with his hands. It was disgusting. But he didn't care, and he let him sleep there, and he took care of him the whole Shabbos. Much of Shabbos, this wilde behemoth tells him, "I just want you to know, Mr. Taz, Rabbi Taz, I'm not human. I was sent here in Shemayim because there was a deed in Shemayim if you would be zeicha to put out your sefer first." And someone was Malabas and said, "Look, you're someone who's moist nefesh. For halachos archim, for chesed, you should put out your sefer first." So somebody else said, "Mehechet." For the Taz, it's easy to have guests. He's the Rav of a shul, and every week his Gabbai handpicks for him the most appropriate guests. That anybody can do. Let's see him do it when it's tough. So they sent me down to give you a run for your money on testing you to see how eager you really are and how much you're willing to be moist nefesh for guests. And I just want you to know, in this chus, your sefer is going to be accepted. It's going to come out first, and it's going to be very accepted. And when they went back and told the Shach was very happy, and he wrote his sefer as well. But he realized that the Taz had this beautiful Maila, and for that he was zeicha to put out his sefer first. I see Chayitzi has something that he wants to say.
I think they knew that the voice came out from Shemaim because maybe they called out the answer.
What does that mean?
Means the Shach's Talmidim who heard the voice from Shemayim, because when they heard the kasha, they called out the answer. And so they heard the voice from Shemayim.
I hear. Okay.
And I'll tell you something. I sang and I danced with Moshe Sharf many times, and still David was able to put out his sefer before me.
Well, you don't know who we invited, do you?
Nope.
Gewaltig. Okay, let's do the Heilige Gemara weiter. We're the third line from the bottom on Daf Tesvav Amud Beis. Mao Mitzayra Mao Sheyishlach Karbanos. We discussed that an oval, meaning an onion, can't send karbanos, and now the Gemara wants to know. The Gemara discusses a menuda sending karbanos. Now the Gemara wants to know about a mitzvah sending karbanos. Toshma, the Tanya it says, and this pasuk is in Yecheskel, and it says v'achay tarasik, after the kohen is metar himself. Now the Gemara says, what does that mean? Achar prishasim in a mace. It means he had a zah shlishi yushvi, and now he's tar from tumas mace. Then the pasuk goes on and says shivas yom yisapulai. Clearly not talking about tumas mace, because that's what achar tarasai means. So that must be referring to Elu Zayin Yimei Sviroi. This must be referring to the 7 days of counting. When a Mitzvah becomes Torah, he has this count of 7 days, like we discussed during those days. He can't be with his wife. And then Ubiyoim Bo Ala Kodesh Ela Chatzar Pnimis L'Sharis B'Kodesh Yaakov Chatasei. And only then, after he's retired himself from Tumas Mace and from Tumas Mitzvah, then he could bring his carbon. Which carbon are we referring to? Zok Gemara, Zu Asir Seifa Shaloi, a kohen hedget. The first time he does avodah has to bring a minchas chavitin. This is the same mincha that the kohen gadol brings every day, but the kohen hedget only brings it on the first day. There are those who explain that a kohen hedget brings it the first day. It's so exciting. It's the first day of his avodah. The kohen gadol brings it every day because we want to remind him that he has to be excited every single day when he does the avodah of a kohen gadol as if it's his first day. Dibur Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon Omer, it says bevoyo yakrib. When he comes to the kodesh, then he could be makar of karbanis, and we learn bizman sheroyu libia royu leakrava. When he could come into the Beis Hamikdash, then he could bring karbanis, and clearly a mitzvah may not come into the Beis Hamikdash. Bizman she'eino royu libia eino royu leakrava. So we have two different psukim, two different opinions as to how we know that a Mitzayra cannot send karbanos. Now we're going to get into a whole interesting sugya about Cherem and how it works, and about Azman Udin. Amar Rava. Rava said, and I have an old Gemara with an old print, so we have to. I have to go into the back. I'm not sure what the current Gemara say. Amar Rava, Minolon. How do you know the Kabeinan Duchta? So how do we know all of the different processes and protocols for how a din Torah works? So how do we know the Kabeinan Duchta? You set up a special place for the Bezdin to sit. Umishadrinan Shlicha the Vedina, and the Dayan himself doesn't have to come and say, come to Din Torah. He could send a Shliach. How do we know that? Zokt the Pasuk, the Chsiv, Yishlach Moshe, Likroi, L'Dasan V'La'aviram B'nei Aliyah. Moshe didn't go himself. He sent a Shliach to call Dasan and Aviram B'nei Aliyah to come to his Din Torah. So you see right away that you could send a Shliach. There's a big Shiloh Halacha, does a letter in the mail count as a Hazmana? Most Batei Dinim do send out letters, and the Bezdin Yisrael said we have so many Dinei Torah, if we had to send a Shliach each time, it would be impossible. So they rely on the mail. Although there are certain shittas who hold that you should send somebody in person, because someone is a lot less likely to refuse to come to Bezdin if he's approached by a human who tells him he has to come, versus if he just gets a letter in the mail. And this invitation isn't like an invitation that you send in a gift. It's an invitation that mandates that you show up. It's like a summons. We know
in the secular courts, there are also some things have to be delivered by hand.
That's right. That's right.
It
has to be served. It's called being served. We know long the mizamnina and ladina. How do you know that you send a hazmana? So there you know, from there you know that there has to be a hazmana, there has to be a summons. Lekame gavarab. How do you know that you have to tell them in the hazmana who they're coming to be in front of, and which great person? The chsiv lefnei Hashem, at uplanya. Hashem, period. So it says Lefnei Hashem, meaning Moshe was part of that Bezdin, but it doesn't mention Moshe, it just mentions Hashem. The Torah Tamima says that what this Gemara is trying to teach us is the fact that the Gemara in Sanhedrin says that in the Hazmana, you have to list off the three Dayanim who are going to be the Bezdin that you're being Muzman to. Our Gemara is saying, when do you have to list off all three Dayanim? That's if they're regular equal Dayanim. But if one of the Dayanim is a major Gavarabba, then you only have to list the Rosh Bezdin. So, for instance, and I'm just using this as an example, not to disrespect anybody, that's one I could say, you're Muslim to come to Bezdin by Reb Shloimeh's Bezdin, right? There'll be other Dayanim there. But it's Reb Shloimeh's Bezdin, so that's called a Gavarabba, so that's considered a Hazmana. So when one of the Dayanim is a Gavarabba, then you don't have to mention all three Dayanim in the Hazmana. It's enough to say this Bezdin is under the auspices of this Gavarabba. How do you know that you have to call both Baladinim? You have to tell. How do you know you have to tell the person that you're being mounted who is calling him, who's the Baldin? Atu planya, dechsiv ata ve'hein ve'ahari. So you see, you can't just call a guy, you have to come to the Torah, you have to tell him who's calling him to the Torah. And there's even a shaila if you have to write in the Azmana what they're calling you about. You know, there's one sheet that holds, if I know who's calling me, I probably know what he's calling me about. But there are those who learn that you have to specifically say in the Azmana what this case is about. And that's all because then maybe a person will be prompted to make a settlement with the Baldin rather than have to go through the Din Torah. How do you know that you set a specific time? Zimna basar zimna. We know that if a person doesn't show up the first time, they don't throw the book at him yet. Rather, if he doesn't show up a second time, that's when they put more pressure. Kirusham paray melech mitzrayim, and Rashi says Kirusham means shamta. Put paray into Cherem. Why? Sha'oin hever hamoyed. Because he missed not only the first time, but he also missed the second time. He missed the second appointment. That's when you start putting into Cherem. Uminalon. The mispaker b'shlicha de bedina. This is a very, very famous Gemara because this is the first halacha that the Chafetz Chaim brings down in Shmir Saloshim. Uminalon the mispaker b'shlicha de bedina. How do you know that if the Baldin who was invited, who was summoned to Bezdin, opens up a mouth to the Shliach Bezdin, Rashi is claiming Shechire, Shliach Bezdin, who Shliach Amar Chafeni, and the Shliach comes back to the Daim, to the Bezdin and says, this person, did he curse me out, or did he open up a mouth to me? How do you know V'asi v'Amar, if the Shliach Bezdin comes and reports the Lashon Hara back to the Bezdin, that this person opened up a mouth to him? Loy mischazik alishna beisha. It's not called lashon hara. Tichsiv ha'enei hanoshim ahem tinaker. Moshe Rabbeinu knew what Dosan and Aviram told the shliach. How did Moshe Rabbeinu know? It must be that the shliach Bezin told it over to Moshe. So what's unique over here is you might think I don't understand. Vos epis that it was a shliach Bezin. Mehechet Esav. Maybe the reason why it was mutter is because it was the truth. It was the truth. He said over what really happened. So the Chafetz Chaim brings a raya from this Gemara here that Vais de Chois, even if something's true, it's still Lashon Hara. Our favorite excuse for saying Lashon Hara is, but it's true. Zok the Chafetz Chaim from here, you see, but it's true, is still Lashon Hara. Because even though it was true, that would have still been considered Lashon Hara if it's not for the fact that it was a Shliach Bezdin reporting back to Bezdin, which Bezdin needs to know, because they need to know who they're dealing with. They need to know what Sfara Buchadol they're inviting over here to Bezdin to make sure to deal with it properly. There are kashas in this Gemara. Just because that's what happened, how do you know that that was the right thing? How do you know it was mutter? So there's a lot of talk about this. How do you know that if the person doesn't want to come to Bezdin, or if he's supposed to predict, how do you know that they can put him into Cherem? Zok the Gemara, because it doesn't the pasuk Ur Merois. Merois was, according to one sheet that the Gemara is going to discuss it shortly, was a fellow who didn't help Baruch when Baruch was trying to fight Sisera. He summoned people to come help, and people didn't come help, so he cursed Merois. So you see, if you're summoned and you don't listen to the summons, then you could go into Cherem. The Hachi Savra the Gava Rabba. How do you know that when you put someone into Cherem, you have to say who's putting him into Cherem? The Chsiv Amar Malach Hashem. So if you don't start putting the Cherem, you have to say Amar Malach Hashem Baruch also L'Shamtoi. Amar L'Shamtoi. Baruch was the one who ordered that they should put in the Cherem. So you have to identify who's putting someone into Cherem. Uminolon the Machramina. How do you know that after you put someone into a Shamta, how do you know you up the ante and you go to a full Cherem? When we discussed Cherem is more severe. For instance, you don't give him jobs. He has to open up a water store where if there's no water, right? Yichsiv uru orur. So you see a double lashon, which means if he doesn't comply, you up the ante. The achol b'shosei b'adei, the koi bar b'amas today. How do you know that there's an isser for anybody to eat or drink with him or to stand within 4 amas of him? Yichsiv yoshveh. It says yoshveh in the pasuk over there that even the yoshveh people with him are also going to be awesome. Uminalan the partinan chatoy b'tzibura. How do you know that you publicize his affairs? Rashi the army la'anshe iroi mishum hachi v'achi b'shamtinolei. So let's say he was put into Cherem somewhere else. How do you know that you could tell people why he's in Cherem? So when they put this Merois into Cherem, they publicized at that time why the Cherem was enacted. With 400 curses, Baruch put Merois into Cherem. There are those who hold Merois was a person, and that's who he was cursing. There are those who say that Merois wasn't a person at all. He was merely a star, Rashi says, Masla de Sisra. It was the Masla of Sisra that was put into Cherem that was cursed. Even the Kechavim were fighting against evil. We no longer mafkarina nichse. How do you know that you could be mafkir in a chosim of a person who's in Shamta? And this was Ezra talking about the people who intermarried, and he wanted everybody to give up their non-Jewish spouses and come back to Yiddishkeit. Whoever doesn't do it, Yochram kol rechushoi v'yibodel mikahol agoyla. So you see that Yochram kol rechushoi, they're mafkir. Rashi says a very important line over here, very sadistic all over Shas. The mafkrinu l'nichsei, the man l'tzayis l'rabbanon, Yochram rechushoi, the hefker bezin hefker mehacha nafku b'chol duchtli. We all want to know there's a famous rule of hefker bezin hefker. Where do you see it from? This pasuk in Ezra is the makar for all over Shas that there's something called hefker bezin hefker. Now there's another pasuk that's brought in Gittin that talks about hefker bezin hefker. I don't remember the name of the pasuk, but the question is why are the two psukim? And the answer is there's two halachas of hefker bezin hefker. A is bezin could be mafker, which yours and no longer belongs to you, but bezin also has a koyach to be makne that to a third party, to somebody else. And that's what we learned from the other pasuk, but I don't remember offhand what it was. It's nagei gittin. And how do you know that this troublemaker, the netzinon, you fight with him, v'laitinon, and you curse him, umachinon, and you patch him, v'talshin sar, you pull out his hair, umashbi'inon, and you make him swear about what he's doing wrong. Tichsiv, v'aravimam, I will fight with them, v'akalalem, I will curse them, v'akem, me'emanoshim, I will hit the people, v'amartem, I will pull out the hair, v'ashbi'im, and I will make them swear. Minon, the chafsinon, v'asrinon. How do you know that you tie them up? You put them on handcuffs, you tie them to a post, and then you give him petch, v'asrinon, and you give him malchus, v'avdinin hardofa, and we do hardofa. What exactly hardofa is, the Gemara is going to explain shortly. Hein lamus, hein l'shrushe, hein la'anish nichsin, ula'surin. So let's see what these means. My l'shrushe, so hein lamus, did you kill them? Hein l'shrushe, what does l'shrushe mean? Amar Ada, Mori, Amar Nechami Bar Baruch, Amar B'chia Bar Avin, Amar B'Yehuda, Hardofa, my, Hardofa. So the Shrusha is Hardofa. My Hardofa, what is Hardofa? Amar B'Yehuda B'Rei Dav Shmuel Bar Shilosh Mishmei Rav. It means Menadan La'alter. Hardofa means you do it right away. L'Shrusha means you deal with it right away. Right away you put him into Chayyim. V'shoinin La'achir Lamed. And after 30 days, you want to again put another Shamta on him, another Nidui. So there's 60 days of nidui, and then umacharimin la'achashishim, and after 60 days you're machamim. Now Tosfos sticks in that la'alter doesn't necessarily mean la'alter. Tosfos says mashum by sheni v'chamishi, which I don't have in our Gemara here, so I'm not sure where it goes in. But Rashi says Tosfos says pirsh b'kundrush sheni mashum by tchila. You warn him on a Monday, on a Thursday, and on a Monday, and then u'minad noisoi b'chem v'chamishi u'v'sheni acham achrim. Oh, so I'm sorry. On the sheni is when you give him the first Asra and you put him into the Nidui. The second Nidui is double down, I guess, after 30 days on a Thursday. And then after 60 days on a Monday, they put him into Chayyim. And there are those who learn that you need a Monday, a Thursday, and a Monday, even before the first Nidui. Okay? Amalei Rav Huna, Barchimna, Hacham Rav Chisda. Oh, it's right over here. Mashin Bei Sheni V'Chamishi V'Sheni. I'm sorry that I missed that in the Gemara. So that's what Tosfos is talking about. So the child is what does it mean? Masha b'sheni v'chamishi v'sheni. So Tosfos has one shot that it's referring to the days of each start, sheni for one, chamishi for the second, and sheni for the cherem. Or if you need sheni v'chamishi v'sheni before the first needed. Dr. Gemara, all these warnings that you need, hanamini l'mamana. That's if someone owes money and he doesn't want to pay, or he's not coming to the about it. Avalaf kirusa, which means Rashi says l'mavada talmidei chachamim. That's a different story. Then la'alter, right away you put him into cherem with no warning at all. There was a shoichet, a butcher, who was chutzpahdik to Rav Tuvi bar Masna. Imnu alei Abaye v'Rava v'Shamtu. So Abaye right away put him into Chayyim. Eventually, the butcher did tshuva, and he was Matthias. Whoever he had to be Matthias. Amar Abaye, so Abaye said, "You got to take him out of Chayyim." Hey, Chalavid, literally, if you're going to suggest that we should take the Chayyim off. He hasn't yet been in Chayyim for 30 days, and we learned that a minimum Chayyim is 30 days. But if we're not going to be Matim, the Rabbanan need his services. Lemezel, Kabayar and Lemezel, the Gemara changes to. They need to buy meat from him. So if he's in Cherem, they won't be able to. Amalei the Rabbi Bar Avin. So they asked Rabbi Bar Avin, Midi Shmielach Baha, did you hear anything about this? So Abaye admitted, I don't know the answer. He was an honor. And he asked Rabbi Bar Avin, maybe you heard Allah, what should I do here? Amalei Hakam Rab Tachlidu Bar Avim Shmuel, Toot Aser, the Toot Shori. Toot means toot, right? The shofar on the bus goes toot, toot, toot. So look, Rashi, toot. You could be matter him, even though you didn't have 30 days. The oita shofar should do the same shofar that you use to put him into cherem, you can use to take him out of cherem. You can take him out of cherem even within 30 days. So you see that they use a shofar to put somebody into cherem. So the same toot that put him into cherem will toot him out of cherem. Okay. But he said that only works l'mamana. So he said, that you could take him right out of cherem. That's if it's l'mamana, and he comes and he fixes his problem. But if it's a question of afkirusa, you need to have 30 days. So when Abaye said that, Alma Kazavar Abaye, you see from Abaye's position that he felt he needed to take the cherem off, and he wasn't willing to do it with less than 30 days. Alma Kazavar Abaye, Hanu Beit Tlasa, the Shamitu. If 3 people, a bezin of 3 people, put somebody to cherem, loy also tlasa achvina b'sharilei. Another bezin of 3 cannot just undo it. You need the same originals. The boilu hanabe tlasa the shemitu ma'ul lemezi tlasa achvina b'sharilei. Can you get 3 other rabbanim to be mater cherem? Tashma menuda l'rav menuda l'talmud. If someone is chutz b'diktus rebbe, and because of that they put him into cherem, of course the talmidim have to follow that cherem, and they can't violate it. They cannot have to do with this person. But menudal talmud. What if he's only put in the cherem because maybe he was disrespectful to a talmud? There ain't a menudal rav. The rav doesn't have to conform to that nidul. Menudal iroi. If someone is put in the cherem for his city, then menudal ira cheres. So if in his own city he was put in the cherem, he's in cherem in every city. But menudal ira cheres. Let's say someone lives in Toronto, but he gets put in the cherem in New York, then ain't a menudal iroi. He's not necessarily a cherem for his own city. Menudal nasi, if someone's menudal because he was chutz b'dikta nasi, menudal l'chol Yisrael, then he's menudal for everybody. Menudal l'chol Yisrael, ain't a menudal nasi. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, echad min talmidim shenida, a talmud that put someone into cherem, someone who was part of a bezin who put people into cherem, umeis, and he died, chelka enimufah. That person's chelik will never be able to be undone. Meaning you need the same Rav that put someone into cherem to take him out. And if the Rav dies, this guy is stuck. Shemamina class, we see 3 things from here. Shemamina talmud shenida l'chvoidoi neduyav nida. You see here that, let's say, there's 2 reasons why they would put someone into cherem. Either because he did something wrong, connected the Torah, or nida l'chvoidoi, or someone humiliated a Talmud Chacham, so that's his own covet. I mean, it's covered the Torah, but it's his own covet. He's allowed to put someone into cherem for that. How do you see that you can put someone into cherem for that? Because it says menudal Rav is menudal Talmud, but the menudal Talmud ain't the menudal Rav. So menudal Talmud means if you did an avla to a certain Talmud, you see he could put you into cherem because you hurt him, which is a personal matter. Not only if he did an avla that he was a chutz b'dikta the Torah. We also learn that kol echad bechad mefer chalkai. You learn that each one of the 3 dayanim that put him into cherem, they each have to remove their cherem, their part. The shemitu, if a bezin of 3 put someone into cherem, also plus achvina b'sharei, you can't have 3 other people to take off the cherem, because it says Rashi midikani chalkoi ene mufer la'olam afilu shar le'achvini. It says Echad Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said Echad min talmid shenidu umeis chelkoi einay mufer. His chelik is never going to be mufer. Zok to Gemara weiter. Amar Meimer Hilchas halacha l'maisa hani betlasa l'shemitu asi betlasa chini b'sharlei. I disagree with this, and I hold that you don't need the same bezin. Even a different bezin could be mater cherem. Amar Rabashi l'Meimer. Rabashi told Meimer. But Tanya we learned Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer. My love, Any move for klal. It must mean any move for klal. So he's asking the kasha, how could you say a meimar that Allah is another bezin could take off the cherim, could be made from Rabbi Shimon Gamliel's mashman law like that, right? Malav any move for klal. So tomorrow loy a meimar will learn differently. Ada also bit close achrina v'shari loy. And there's a shiloh what this means. Does this mean you just need 3 nudayonim to be mater cherim, or you need 3 dayanim instead of the person that's there? I'm sorry, instead of the person that died, but you still need the other 2. So that means you're going to have a total of 5 to take it away. Taner Rabban, ein nidui pachos milamijoy. Nidui is a minimum of 30 days, like we learned. The ein nizifa pachos mizaynyom. And nizifa, which is a lesser madrega, Rashi's ga'ira. So when you get scramped at, that's 7 days. Even though you don't have a klor raya, zeichel davar, you have a zeichel davar. Shenemar, it says in the pasuk, v'yavia yorak york b'faneo haloisi kolem shivas yomim. So you see that nazifa is 7 days. It's not a raya because we learned that a mitzayras has to count 7 days of tahira, and therefore you don't have a klor raya that it was only the nazifa. Amar Abchista, nidui shalonu. Our niduis of today, Rashi says, a b'nei babel is k'nezifa shalahen, is like the nezifa very strong, which means 7 days. Nezifa did do shiva v'suloi, and it's only 7 days. Correct, Tamar, is that the case? For Rab Shimon bar Rebbe, Bar Kapara, Havayasli v'kagarsi, they were sitting and learning. Kashalu shmaitza, they had a difficulty. They didn't understand the sugya. Amalei Rab Shimon lebar Kapara. So Rab Shimon by Rebbe told Bar Kapara, Dover zeh tzarich Rebbe. I think for this we need a real Rebbe. In other words, he told his Rebbe, Rebbe, I think we need a Rebbe here. In other words, Rebbe, you don't have what it takes. So it was a little bit of a disrespectful comment. Omer le Bar Kapara le Rab Shimon. So Bar Kapara to Rab Shimon, Ma Rebbe Omer b'Dover zeh. So what does Rebbe say? So he was like a little insulted. So Rashi says, "My Rebbe over there, ain't Rebbe nobody knows this. You're making it sound like I'm second rate. We need to find someone first rate. Nobody will have a teretz for this. This is a very difficult issue we're working with." So he saw that Bar Kapara was a little bit angry. So Rab Shimon went to his father Rebbe. Rab Shimon went to his father Rebbe. He told his father what happened about this conversation. Ikpid. Rashi asks, how could you tell us to your father about something that Bar Kapara said? So Rashi says, he wasn't trying to badmouth him. But Ikbad, in the meantime, Rebbe was Ikbad. Also Bar Kapara lis chazuyalei. So Bar Kapara wanted to come to see Rebbe. Amar le Bar Kapara, eni makircha me olam. I don't know who you are. So Rashi says, Amar le Bar Kapara, eni makircha remez loy she'ena rotz l'roisa. So forget, they saw that Bar Kapara was upset, so he wanted to go. Reb Shimon wanted to go be mefayis Bar Kapara, and Bar Kapara said, I don't even know who you are. So Bar Kapara was clearly upset with him. Eni makircha me olam. So right away, it was clear to Rab Shimon that Bar Kapara had akpad against him, and therefore he actually he lied low. He took upon himself nazifa for 30 days. Rebbe said that we shouldn't learn Torah in the shuk in public. Why would he make such a drasha? My darsh, where did he know this from? Because it says chamuka yerechayach, meaning the jewels that are in your thigh. A thigh, kamoy chalayim. My yerech b'seiser, just like a yerech. So we're comparing the Torah to chamuka yerechayach, just like the yerech, a thigh should normally be covered. So too, after Torah b'seiser, it should be covered, meaning you shouldn't be learning Torah in public. Okay. Yotze Reb Chia went, Vishana l'shnei b'nei achiv b'shuk, and he actually learned Torah in public with his 2 nephews, l'Rav u'l'Rabba Bar Chana. So Shama Rebbe heard about it after he already said people shouldn't be learning Torah in public. Ikpid, he had a hakpada. Also, Reb Chia is chazuyale. Reb Chia came to see Rebbe. Omerlei, he made fun of him. He didn't call him his name. He said, Aya, mi kairlach, bechutz. Who's looking for you outside? In other words, Aya, I think someone's looking for you outside. It was like a little chipper. You like going outside, go outside. Rashi says, Aya kach kina shemosh Reb Chia lashon denai. Re'emi kairlach, claimant tzedek, get out of here. Someone's looking for you there. Go see if the sky is falling. So clearly, Yoda the nakat milsa b'daiti. So he knew Rabbi had akpada. So Rabbi Chia took upon himself not mizifusa with nafshi tlosin yom. The yom tlosin on the 30th day of the nizifa that Rabbi Chia accepted upon himself. Shalach lei, Rabbi sent to him ha hadar, come back to me. Shalach lei the loylaisi, and then he sent in a message after that, don't come. So he sent the WhatsApp come, and then he sent the second WhatsApp, don't come. Frank the Gemara, what is Rebbe? Is he a schizophrenic? Mikar my sover, when he sent out the first WhatsApp, what did he mean? And at the end, when he said don't come, what did he think? When he said come to me on the morning of the 30th, he thought and therefore, since we're ready the 30th day, he's out of his nazifa. But when he sent the second WhatsApp, you don't say Miksayim, meaning he can't come out of his nazifa until the end of the day. L'saif also, L'maisa, Reb Chia came. Even though two messages were sent out, the second message was, don't come. Amalai Mayasa, so Rebbe said, why did you come? Amalai, what do you mean why I came? I got a WhatsApp from you. The Shalachli, you are. The lazy. You sent me a WhatsApp that I should come. But I sent you another WhatsApp that you shouldn't come. I guess I didn't have good reception. I got your first WhatsApp. I didn't get your second WhatsApp. So that's why I came. So Rabbi said about this situation that Rabbi Shalom controls the situation. For Hashem, when Hashem likes the ways of a person, even his enemies will make shalom with him, and the Rebbe Shalom obviously wanted that Reb Chia should come out of the Nazifa. My time of it marhafi. So Rebbe asked Reb Chia, why did you do it? Why, if I said don't learn Torah b'Rabbim, why did you learn Torah b'Rabbim? Chachma has to be sung outside. So Rebbe said, in Karis, if you learned Lashanish, you didn't chazer. In Shanish Lashilashta, you didn't chazer a third time. In Shilata, they didn't explain it to you properly. I'll tell you shot in that pasuk. Not that you shall learn Torah b'Rabbim. Rather, chachmas b'chutz teraynis k'derav b'dam merava kol oisuk b'Torah mi b'fnim. If someone learns Torah b'tzina, don't think people are not going to know about it. He'll still get respected because Torah say machrezes halav b'chutz. The Rebbe makes it that even if you're learning Torah b'tzina, the Torah is made upon you, and you're respected for your Torah. Vaksiv loy meirosh.
Interesting.
What do you mean? Okay. Zak tomorrow. Vaksiv. You're supposed to learn in public. Is a drush. That's a different story. Rabbi Chia. Yes.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
It's interesting because the words of the Gemara where Rebbe said Kiderova is not the words actually of Rebbe, because that must be the speaking.
I'm not sure if my internet's bad or if your internet's bad, but
because Rebbe
is it my internet?
No, just keep going.
No, it's ours. It's here. Yosy, it's here.
Okay, so let's go back there. I'm not able to hear it. So Reb Chia, what's Reb Chia going to do with that person? So tomorrow, Mukila b'tzedakah u'b'gemilas chasad. What do you have to do with tzedakah? Tzedakah and gemilas chasad must be done with tzedakah, but not Torah. I'll call upon them. Alman naziv plus yoimin. You see that the nazifa is 3 days. Why? Because let's see what happened. Or it's 30 days, I guess. Nazifa, you see, it's 3 days. You see, it's 3 days. So tomorrow nazifa sanosi shiny. Can you hear me or am I breaking up?
I think you're
You're
fine.
fine. It's just there in shul, so just keep going.
Okay. Could be it's not plugged in there. Okay. So Zok Gemara weiter. Alma Nazifa did who? You see that their Nazifa was 3 days. And Nazifa is not the, so you see 3 days and not 30 days. So Gemara, Nazifa is nasi shiny. I'm a little bit confused. I'm not sure where we had the 30 days, where you see the 3 days. Is it from over here? We're all talking 30 days over here. But Rebbe, with Rebbe and Rebbe, I'm showing that it was 30 days. 1 second. It says Nogni Zivusa Benafshe Tlosan Jan Tlos on the 30th day. I'm not sure what's happening here. Because the Gemara over here says Alman Nazifis did who is Tlashem. You see, it's 3 days. The Gemara Nazifis Nasi shiny. The Nazifa of a Nazi is different. Correct Gemara. Unazifa Didag Kama have it. How much is our Nazifa? So Gemara Chadyoim, it's only 1 day. He had a Shmuel Umar Ukfa. He have a Yosy. When they were learning Garishmite, they were learning. Mar Ukva Kamed Shmuel Berachik Dalaramis. Mar Ukva was sitting in front of Shmuel 4 amas away, which means that Shmuel was a greater Talmud Chacham than Mar Ukva. Nevertheless, they have a Yosef Bedina, but when they were sitting by the entire and Mar Ukva was the Dayan, have a Yosef Shmuel Kamed Mar Ukva. But when they were sitting in the entire, even though Shmuel was greater, Shmuel sat in front of Mar Ukva $4 amas away. So Rashi tells us, he would sit lower. So Shmuel, even though he's a greater Talmud Chacham, he didn't sit on the level of Mar Ukva. He sat lower than Mar Ukva, meaning he showed Mar Ukva respect. Okay? But he did sit close enough that he would still be able to hear what Shmuel was saying. So Rashi says, the Shmuel Rabbi B'Torah, so they could still hear what he said. So Kol Yoima, every day, have Malavale Mar Ukva Shmuel Arush every day, Mar Ukva would walk Shmuel home to Shmuel's house. Yoim Echad Itrid B'Dinei. One day Mar Ukva got tied up in a din Torah and he got delayed, and therefore have Azo Shmuel Basrei. So Shmuel was walking behind him, and Shmuel was a little bit upset that Mar Ukva was delayed. Kimata Levese, when they got to his house, Omer Lei Loi Nagalach. Rashi said, Kolomer Lei Stagilach Dazlila Basrach. You don't need me to walk behind you. Lishlu Mimar Betigre. So Rashi says, let me go back home. In other words, Shmuel was complaining that Mar Ukva held him up so long and he was so delayed. So Zog to Gemara, so what happened? Yoda did knock at Milsa. He knew that Shmuel was upset. He kept Nazifas for 1 day, so you see that our Nazifas for 1 day. Let's learn 2 more minutes and then we'll stop. Hahi Itza, Davi Yosva, Bishvila, she was sitting on the path, have a pashtakara, she stuck out her foot. And Rashi says, well, I'm not sure what happened. She stuck her foot out, but it wasn't Bakovidik. It wasn't Bakovidik. And she didn't show respect when she was sitting there. Amar, he said, this woman is a mechutzefes. Also the Kamed Rab Nachman, and she came in front of Rab Nachman. Amar, he told her, "Mi shames shamtem upuei." He commented that you're a mechutzef, but he say explicitly those specific words that you're in a shamta. Amar loy. She said, no, he didn't say specifically that I'm in a shamta. Amar told her, "Zilu nehugi nizifusa chad yoyme benafshech." Just keep 1 day of Nazifa, because if he didn't say Shamta, then you're not in the Chayim for 30 days. It's just a Nazifa, and you should only keep it for 1 day. Zutra bar Tobia have a kapasuk sudra kameid Rabbi Yehuda. So Rashi says kapasuk la sudra. Rashi says it's limit parshas. He was learning by Rabbi Yehuda. He matalai psuka when he got up to this pasuk. The Eila divrei David harachrayim. These are the last words that David said. Amrlei, he said achrayim mechlal dika rishonim. That means there must be other things that David said. What are they? Rishonim ma'ninu. Shasik v'loy amrlei. Rabbi Yehuda didn't answer. Shasik v'loy amrlei v'loy midi. Hadar amrlei. So what happened was Zutra bar Tobia was pestering Rabbi Yehuda. So again he asked him. Achrayim mechlal dika rishonim. Again rishonim ma'ninu. Amalei, so Rabbi Yehuda got upset, and he told him, "Ma daitech, l'yadi perusha the high kra lav gavarabahu." You think that just because I don't know pshat in this pasuk, I'm not a gavarabah? You think that I'm not a Talmid Chacham just because I couldn't answer your question? So Zutra realized that Rabbi Yehuda was upset at him. Yada the nakat milsa b'daitei. Zutra realized that Rabbi Yehuda was upset at him. Nog nezifusu b'nafshei chajoyma. Again, he kept 1 day of nezifa. That's Gemara. Uda Asan Allah. So now that we're in the subject, what take were the Rishonim? Uda Asan Allah Mia Achroinim Mechalal Dik Rishonim Mai. So what are they? Zakta Gemara. It says Vayidaber David Lashem as Divrei Ashir Azois B'Yom Hitzel Hashem Oisoin Mikaf Kol Oivav Umikaf Shol. Amalei Hakadosh Baruch Hu LeDavid. David Shira Ata Omer Ama Palosei Shel Shol. Are you saying Shira on the fact that Shaul had a downfall? Ilmali ata Shaul v'hu David. If you would have traded places, ibadati kami David mipanav, I would have wiped you out. So we'll pick this up tomorrow night. This gets into a whole new sugya. Okay, so let's stop here, and the Mitzvah will be mamshech tomorrow. Tomorrow night, B'ez Hashem, Moed Shabbos, we'll learn at 7:45. And I believe if we're doing at 7:45, we're going to have to learn on a different channel. We have to learn on channel 3 because I believe that Daniel Finkel learns on channel 1.
Channel 2.
Well, channel 1 and 2 are both taken. I think we have to do channel 3.
Rabbi Akiva says that channel 2 is not taken.
Okay, so then we'll do channel 2, so which is 1948. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Yes. Shkoyach.
Couple of things. First of all,